There's a moment every enthusiast remembers, not a specific car or badge, but that first encounter with something that felt bred for more than pavement. You hear the low thrum before you see it, a machine that doesn't glide so much as coil with intent. The proportions are familiar, yet there's a sense of barely restrained purpose in the stance, the angles, the way air seems to bend around it instead of pass through. It's not exotic in the traditional sense. It looks like it belongs in a driveway, but carries the aura of something that clawed its way out of competition instead of committee meetings. You start wondering how a street-legal sedan or coupe could ever feel that raw without breaking the rules, or maybe because it bent them just enough. And beneath that sound and shape, there's a story about how racing ambitions, regulatory ceilings, and a hungry fan base collided in one generation that would go on to define loyalty, controversy, and legend. Before diving into how it happened and why it still echoes today, hit like and subscribe, then drop a comment with the next machine you want covered. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 did not arrive in a vacuum. It came from a lineage shaped by mud, gravel, and the pressure of global rally stages long before most American drivers knew what a boxer engine was. To understand why that particular model hit so hard in the United States, you have to rewind to the late 1990s, when the manufacturer responsible for it was still building a reputation around flat-4 engines and all-wheel drive traction rather than mainstream performance prestige. The Subaru WRX name had existed overseas for years by that point, a badge tied to homologation requirements and the need to turn race technology into something you could register at a DMV. But until the early 2000s, North America only caught glimpses in magazines, import videos, and the occasional gray market import that drew crowds in parking lots. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 became the payoff for all that pent-up interest, but its origins were not the work of a single decision. They were the result of decades of engineering culture and motorsport obsession colliding with emerging American tastes. When developers set out to make it viable for US asphalt and federal regulations, they had to balance homologation spirit with dealership reality. That meant translating rally-bred suspension geometry into something that could survive potholes, tuning a turbocharged engine for available fuel quality, and designing a cabin that could appeal to buyers who weren't accustomed to aggressively bolstered seats or functional hood scoops. At the same time, they faced a marketplace shifting rapidly. SUVs and sedans were diverging. Import tuning was becoming mainstream, and a generation of young adults suddenly had disposable income and an appetite for something more visceral than commuter appliances. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 entered a world where enthusiasm was already lit by video games, online forums, and rumors about legendary overseas models. Long before launch, the brand gauged demand indirectly through the response to the standard WRX introduced to the US a few years earlier. That car sold beyond expectations, but owners immediately called for more power, sharper handling, and a version truer to what international drivers had been enjoying. So engineers went back to what made their rally program competitive: symmetrical all-wheel drive, a stout 6-speed manual gearbox, and a turbocharged flat-4 that was both compact and responsive. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 featured the EJ257 engine, tuned to produce around 300 horsepower for the US market, though enthusiasts argued endlessly about crank versus wheel output and how it compared to overseas variants. The team knew it had to feel different from the standard WRX, not just incrementally better. They stiffened the suspension, reinforced the chassis, fitted larger Brembo brakes, and included the driver-controlled center differential, an unusual feature in a street car at the time. Styling became another battleground. The large rear wing drew attention and divided opinions immediately, but it gave the car a visual link to its rally cousins. The hood scoop was functional, feeding a top-mounted intercooler that helped manage intake temperatures under boost. Inside, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 balanced practicality with purpose. The cabin materials were not luxurious by mainstream sedan standards, but the emphasis was on durability and driver engagement. The gauge cluster offered clear analog readouts. The seats were built to hold occupants in place during hard cornering, and the pedal box positioned for heel-toe shifting showed where priorities lay. Even sound insulation choices favored mechanical feedback over quietness, a decision that made the cabin feel alive, but occasionally drew criticism from buyers expecting a more hushed experience. Ownership reality also played a major role in shaping how the Subaru WRX STI 2004 was received. Insurance costs were higher than the standard WRX, Maintenance demanded a degree of attentiveness unusual for sedans in its price bracket, and turbo engines could punish neglect. Yet owners embraced those responsibilities because the trade-offs delivered something rare. A four-door sedan that could commute Monday through Friday and feel track-ready on weekends without dramatic modifications. Culturally, the timing was impeccable. The Fast and Furious franchise had boosted awareness of turbocharged imports, tuner magazines were thriving, and online communities were maturing into hubs for shared builds, troubleshooting, and pride. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 entered that space with authenticity. The fact that it had real rally lineage rather than manufactured marketing slogans gave it instant credibility. Dealers sometimes struggled to keep inventory, with some buyers placing deposits sight unseen. The manufacturer knew expectations were high and tried to manage rollout carefully, training service departments for the unique drivetrain and ensuring parts availability for components like the DCCD and Brembo brake systems. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 also reflected internal corporate compromises. It needed to comply with US emissions rules while retaining the character that made it competitive abroad. Engineers detuned certain elements compared to Japanese market versions, but kept enough rawness to satisfy purists. They chose a 2-liter engine overseas, but opted for a 2.5-liter displacement in the US to deliver torque better suited to local driving scenarios. Some purists criticized the change, arguing it altered the engine's rev character, but torque became a selling point in states with long highways and steep grades. Even color options were strategic. World Rally Blue became iconic, often paired with gold wheels reminiscent of competition cars, but other tones were available for buyers who wanted attention without the full rally cosplay. Wheel designs, aero elements, and interior trims varied slightly depending on region and options, giving enthusiasts room to personalize within the factory palette. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 also influenced dealership culture. Some sales staff were new to performance-oriented buyers who asked about boost thresholds, drivetrain splits, and aftermarket compatibility. That shaped how the car was marketed. More word of mouth and enthusiast event presence than glossy luxury campaigns. Owners quickly discovered the car responded well to modifications. Bolt-on intakes, exhausts, and ECU tunes could unlock performance gains, but the relative fragility of stock internals beyond certain thresholds reminded everyone it was still a carefully balanced package from the factory. Tuner shops embraced the platform, offering staged upgrade paths and suspension tweaks, and autocross events saw rising participation from STI owners. At the same time, not everyone was impressed. Critics argued the ride was too stiff, the cabin too plain, and the fuel economy impractical. Some saw it as a niche product masquerading as a family car, but this tension added to its appeal. Driving one signaled a commitment to something more focused than daily convenience. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 bridged two worlds: practical enough to haul groceries, potent enough to conquer mountain switchbacks. Early adopters shared stories about surprising sports car owners at track days or navigating snowy winter roads with confidence. That dual nature solidified its reputation as more than a trend. It was a statement. Over time, owners built communities around maintenance tips, performance upgrades, and road trip experiences. Cars became symbols of identity, and used examples passed from one enthusiast to another like heirlooms. Yet it was never just about nostalgia. Even in its first model year on US soil, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 reshaped expectations for what a performance sedan could be. Its entry marked a turning point in how American buyers saw imports, not as underdogs, but as rivals to established domestic and European sports sedans. The car forced competitors to take notice, whether through acceleration times, handling feedback, or sales traction among younger demographics. And as more drivers experienced its all-wheel drive capabilities in rain, snow, and uneven pavement, the narrative shifted from novelty to credibility. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 had to prove it could live outside the rally stage, and it succeeded by merging motorsport engineering with everyday usability in a way few vehicles had attempted before. Without deviating from its roots, it managed to align with emerging consumer desires for individuality, capability, and value. That blend of traits is what gave it such a strong foothold in a market that could have easily dismissed it as too specialized. While some buyers hesitated at the bold styling, those who embraced it became vocal advocates, turning the car into a rolling billboard for its strengths. The manufacturer monitored feedback carefully, noting which features resonated and which drew complaints, shaping future iterations based on real-world reactions. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 set the tone for that iterative process by proving enthusiasts would accept compromises in refinement if passion and purpose were evident. As law enforcement and insurance agencies began to notice higher speeds and modifications among owners, regulations and monitoring adapted. But most buyers respected the balance between performance and responsibility, understanding that longevity depended on smart driving and maintenance. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 wasn't marketed as a toy or a trophy. It was pitched as a driver's car with heritage and hardware to back it up. That messaging, combined with the authenticity of its rally background, kept it from being dismissed as a fad. In the years that followed its introduction, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 remained a reference point for how to bring a motorsport-inspired machine to the masses without diluting its essence. Every decision that shaped it, from engine tuning to doctor. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 entered a marketplace where performance expectations were shifting, and its immediate reception showed how drastically it disrupted assumptions about what a four-door sedan could deliver. In the early 2000s, many American buyers associated speed with rear-wheel drive coupes or expensive European imports, not compact sedans with functional aero and rally-bred hardware. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 challenged that bias and ignited fresh competition from a rival who had been building its own all-wheel drive turbocharged contender overseas. Enthusiast magazines and automotive journalists tested the Subaru WRX STI 2004 against everything from rear-drive sports cars to luxury sedans, often focusing on handling dynamics, braking performance, and real-world usability. Its combination of torque-rich delivery, symmetrical all-wheel drive, and a 6-speed manual transmission created benchmarks that rivals scrambled to meet or exceed. Owners and reviewers quickly discovered that its driver-controlled center differential allowed tailored responses to road conditions, an unusual feature in an era when many performance cars relied on less adaptable systems. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 found itself at the center of tuner culture, where grassroots modifiers sought ways to eke out additional power without sacrificing reliability. Aftermarket brands developed parts at a rapid pace, from upgraded intercoolers and turbo-back exhaust systems to suspension kits and ECU flashes. Car meets, forums, and social media channels became showcases for individualized builds, and some owners treated the Subaru WRX STI 2004 as a canvas for both street-legal tuning and motorsport pursuits. That attention raised the model's profile beyond enthusiasts. As more examples appeared at track days and autocross events, weekend warriors embraced the idea that you could drive to the event, compete, and drive home without swapping vehicles or compromising comfort. The car's visibility in sanctioned events cemented its credibility, and its performance in amateur motorsport influenced buying decisions among younger drivers who might otherwise have leaned toward rear-drive platforms. Insurance companies and policymakers began to notice increased registrations tied to performance usage, occasionally leading to coverage adjustments, but that did little to dissuade fans who valued the Subaru WRX STI 2004 for its versatility. The influence of motorsport on its design also extended into marketing narratives. While the model's exact competition spec variants weren't sold stateside, imagery from rally championships bolstered its reputation. Instead of being positioned as a luxury sports sedan, it was framed as a machine forged through adversity, capable of handling snowbanks and gravel switchbacks as easily as asphalt. This approach attracted buyers from regions with harsh winters, where all-wheel drive performance translated to everyday confidence instead of just weekend thrills. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 also catalyzed Rivalry. Another manufacturer with its own rally heritage began offering a direct competitor a few years later, forcing enthusiasts and journalists to debate which approach, torque-heavy versatility or high-rev precision, defined the segment. That rivalry shaped countless comparison tests, ownership decisions, and online arguments that fueled long-term engagement with the platform. Even those who never bought either car followed the narrative, drawn in by the authenticity of two machines born from real racing pedigrees. Regulatory factors added complexity. Emission standards and safety mandates meant the Subaru WRX STI 2004 had to strike a balance between raw performance and compliance. The engine's displacement and tuning were selected to meet U.S. fuel quality and emissions requirements, resulting in output figures tailored specifically to the market. Some international enthusiasts criticized these adjustments, pointing to discrepancies between U.S. and overseas specs. But American buyers appreciated the broader torque curve and drivability at lower speeds. As the model's popularity climbed, so did expectations. Buyers who embraced the Subaru WRX STI 2004 as an attainable performance car began demanding more advanced technology in subsequent generations, from infotainment to improved materials. But many early adopters were wary of changes that might erode the analog mechanical feel that defined the 2004 version. This tension created a challenge for future designers tasked with updating the model while preserving its spirit. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 also left its mark on automotive media. Road tests highlighted how its performance numbers rivaled or surpassed more expensive competitors, and long-term reviews emphasized durability when properly maintained. These stories reinforced its image as a legitimate alternative to high-end sports sedans and structured how future coverage approached Japanese performance cars. Ownership pride became part of its identity. Communities formed around road trips, maintenance clinics, track events, and modification showcases. Owners shared knowledge on turbo care, clutch use, and drivetrain servicing, helping new buyers avoid pitfalls and prolong performance. The shared passion turned ownership into participation, not passive consumption, and that culture became part of the reputational fabric that still surrounds the car. The economic context also mattered. In the early 2000s, performance cars were becoming more accessible thanks to financing options and rising incomes among young professionals. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 capitalized on this moment by offering power and handling without six-figure pricing, appealing to those who wanted more than a commuter but couldn't justify exotic costs. With everyday usability baked in, it transcended the stereotype of a weekend-only sports car. Over time, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 developed a mythology rooted in personal stories. Road trips through mountain passes, snow days turned fun days, and first-track sessions that revealed the full capabilities of its drivetrain. As these stories circulated, they reinforced the idea that this was not a disposable performance product but a long-term companion. Used examples retained value better than many competitors because the demand remained high, even after newer models arrived. The car also influenced repair and tuning industries, prompting shops to specialize in its platform and train technicians on boxer engine quirks and drivetrain intricacies. That specialization created an ecosystem that sustained interest long after the initial sales wave. Meanwhile, aftermarket parts availability allowed owners to tailor their cars to individual needs without reinventing the platform. Cultural shifts further strengthened its position. As social media grew, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 found itself featured in car photography accounts, enthusiast pages, and rally fan channels. It began appearing at car meets alongside muscle cars, exotics, and vintage builds, demonstrating broad appeal across enthusiast subcultures. Its mix of practicality and personality made it a favorite for daily-driven projects and weekend warriors alike. Dealers who once treated it as a niche offering began recognizing its mainstream pull and adjusted marketing strategies accordingly. Economic downturns, fuel price spikes, and evolving buyer habits challenged the segment as a whole. But the Subaru WRX STI 2004 weathered those changes by virtue of its inherent versatility. While some performance cars suffered in times of uncertainty, this model's ability to function as both a commuter and a thrill machine insulated it from rapid value drops. Owners who might have sold sports coupes during tough times often held on to their vehicles because they could still justify them as practical. The influence extended into driving games and pop culture references, with the Subaru WRX STI 2004 often featured as a customizable hero vehicle. Younger fans discovered it digitally before they encountered it on the road, contributing to future demand and used market interest. That digital presence helped sustain relevance when production years moved on, and it created aspirational value among audiences who were still years from licensure. Motorsport remained central to its identity. Amateur rally events, rallycross competitions, and hill climbs saw participation from owners who wanted to test their cars in environments similar to the ones that inspired their creation. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 performed well in these arenas, not because it was the most powerful or the lightest, but because it was engineered with balance and traction at the forefront. That consistency reinforced the message that the car was not pretending to be something it wasn't. It delivered on the heritage that shaped it. Over time, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 became a reference point in discussions about what makes a driver's car memorable. Critics who once dismissed its styling or cabin materials often softened their opinions after witnessing reliability over high mileage and real-world use cases. It became clear that the value proposition was not rooted in luxury or refinement, but in capability, authenticity, and community support. As newer generations introduced more technology and different styling cues, the 2004 version held onto a loyal following that preferred analog engagement and mechanical feedback. Regulations around emissions, noise, and safety eventually pushed automakers to revise or retire elements that defined the Subaru WRX STI 2004. Turbocharging remained, but exhaust notes softened, and electronic aids replaced some mechanical systems. Enthusiasts recognize these changes as necessary, but sometimes mourn the loss of certain tactile qualities. That nostalgia helped elevate the 2004 model further, turning it into both a time capsule and a performance benchmark. By the time a decade had passed, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 carries a legacy that extends far beyond its production year, shaping the expectations of enthusiasts, influencing future models, and leaving a benchmark that subsequent iterations have been measured against. In the modern enthusiast landscape, its reputation is not built solely on nostalgia. It's upheld by continued relevance in driving dynamics, modification potential, and cultural presence. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 stands as a reminder of what happens when motorsport DNA is translated to the street with minimal dilution. And that balance still resonates with drivers who prioritize engagement over electronic mediation. In practical terms, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 continues to influence the used market in ways few early 2000s performance sedans can claim. Clean examples command strong resale value, and buyers actively seek unmodified or tastefully tuned vehicles because the platform has proven itself resilient under responsible ownership. Enthusiast forums and social media groups still circulate maintenance tips, tuning advice, and build showcases, reinforcing the idea that this machine remains a living part of automotive culture rather than a relic. The demand for original components, such as factory seats, Brembo brake systems, and stock differentials, reflects both its collector appeal and functional desirability. At the same time, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 serves as a lens through which enthusiasts judge newer releases. When later generations introduced heavier bodies, different styling cues, and more electronic aids, comparisons to the 2004 model were inevitable. Some buyers embraced advancements, but many pointed back to the rawer, more analog driving feel of the original US spec STI as the sweet spot. That sentiment has shaped how manufacturers approach performance updates, encouraging a careful balance between modern expectations and traditional engagement. Enthusiasts often cite the steering feedback, throttle response, and mechanical connection as qualities that modern cars sometimes struggle to replicate. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 also set expectations for how performance intersects with daily life. Its usability in snow, rain, and mixed terrain helped expand the idea that capability need not be seasonal or confined to perfect conditions. That practicality shaped how buyers perceived performance cars in general, prompting other manufacturers to consider all-wheel drive variants and turbocharged options in segments once dominated by naturally aspirated or rear-drive formats. Its influence remains visible every time a turbocharged all-wheel drive sedan or hatch enters the market, positioned as both fun and functional. In the broader culture, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 maintains a presence in track day scenes, rallycross events, and tuner meets. Younger drivers discovering the model today often view it as a milestone, something to aspire to as a first serious performance car or a project with character. Its accessibility in the used market, combined with a vast aftermarket ecosystem, means the platform has not faded into obscurity. Instead, it has become a springboard for new builds, restorations, and enthusiast journeys that blend old-school charm with modern upgrades. For collectors, originality and condition have begun to matter more as the vehicle ages. Unmodified examples, especially in signature colors and with factory components intact, are increasingly treated as investments. That trend mirrors patterns seen with other iconic performance cars that initially served as daily drivers but became legends over time. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 is transitioning into that status, and buyers who recognize that shift are preserving examples accordingly. The platform's endurance also comes from emotional connections. Owners frequently describe the 2004 model as the car that introduced them to track days, off-road adventures, or lifelong friendships. That depth of association strengthens its legacy and ensures that its influence isn't confined to horsepower figures or lap times. It's about what it enabled people to do, how it made them feel, and the opportunities it created to participate in a broader automotive community. Mechanically, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 is old enough now that maintenance has become a defining factor in longevity. Head gasket care, turbo health, and drivetrain servicing are topics that circulate regularly among owners and prospective buyers, and the availability of parts has remained solid thanks to strong aftermarket support. Enthusiast shops continue to offer service expertise and restoration options, and many technicians gained early career experience working on this generation. That continuity has helped keep the platform alive and viable as both a performance machine and a collector item. The legacy of the Subaru WRX STI 2004 also influences brand strategy. Manufacturers have acknowledged the impact of its debut year in shaping enthusiast expectations and market identity. When newer models were critiqued for losing some of the rawness or signature features, those criticisms often referenced the 2004 version as the standard bearer. Even without direct comparison in advertising, its ghost hovers over product planning meetings and enthusiast discussions alike. Looking ahead, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 represents a moment in automotive history when regulations, technology, and culture aligned just enough to produce something iconic without excessive compromise. As electrification and advanced driver aids reshape the industry, the qualities that define this model, mechanical engagement, tactile feedback, and performance rooted in competition, are becoming rarer. That scarcity enhances its importance and reinforces why enthusiasts hold it in such high regard. In closing the loop on its story, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 proves that a performance sedan can transcend its power figures and production run by embodying purpose with clarity. It showed that motorsport credibility could coexist with practicality, and that a new market segment could be formed without abandoning identity. The final piece of the narrative ties back to the beginning. A machine shaped by rally ambition, refined for real-world use, and remembered because it never pretended to be anything other than what it was built to be. The discussion now turns to what lessons it leaves behind and what today's enthusiast can take from its journey as the segment closes with modern implications and ownership realities. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 remains a compelling case study in how a single model year can set the tone for an entire segment, influence buying behavior long after production, and maintain cultural relevance even as automotive technology evolves. For American enthusiasts considering ownership today, context matters as much as performance. On the used market, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 typically carries a premium over comparable cars of similar age and mileage. Pricing varies depending on originality and condition, but unmodified examples with clean histories are especially sought after. Many have passed through multiple enthusiast owners, and maintenance records become a deciding factor in whether a car is worth pursuing. Buyers who understand the demands of turbocharged engines, all-wheel drive systems, and performance clutches are better equipped to find lasting value. Parts availability remains strong thanks to both factory channels and a thriving aftermarket, but sourcing certain original components can require patience and persistence. On reliability, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 rewards diligence. Regular oil changes with the correct viscosity, attention to cooling systems, and timely timing belt service are key to longevity. The EJ257 engine is durable when cared for, but can reveal weaknesses if tuning exceeds safe thresholds or maintenance is neglected. Drivetrain components, including the 6-speed manual and driver-controlled center differential, are robust, yet they require fluid changes and proper usage to avoid premature wear. Enthusiasts considering modifications should approach upgrades strategically rather than chasing peak numbers without supporting components. From a regulatory and insurance standpoint, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 occupies an interesting position. It's old enough now that depreciation has stabilized, but performance classification can still impact coverage costs depending on the driver's profile and location. In some regions, emissions inspections may require careful consideration of aftermarket exhausts, catalytic converters, and ECU tunes. Yet most owners find ways to balance personalization with compliance, using knowledge shared through forums, local clubs, and specialty shops. For Americans thinking about import alternatives or sourcing from outside the country, the 2004 model year carries the advantage of being fully US spec, eliminating the need for federalization processes that can apply to foreign market vehicles less than 25 years old. This accessibility, combined with the rising interest in analog-era performance cars, has turned the Subaru WRX STI 2004 into both a functional purchase and a collectible opportunity. Availability isn't as abundant as it once was, but the cars that remain often stay within enthusiast circles and are well cared for. Looking ahead, its legacy continues to shape expectations around all-wheel drive performance sedans. Enthusiasts who were teenagers when it debuted are now in positions to purchase cars they once admired from afar, driving continued demand. Meanwhile, younger fans discovering it through social media and motorsport footage add to the cycle of appreciation. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 bridges generations because it combines mechanical authenticity with everyday usability in a way few modern vehicles attempt. In evaluating its broader impact, the Subaru WRX STI 2004 shows how a model born from competition can redefine what buyers expect from performance cars that serve daily roles. It widened the market for enthusiast sedans, pressured competitors to respond, and anchored a community that thrives on hands-on engagement. Its influence can still be seen in how automakers frame turbocharged, all-wheel drive vehicles as lifestyle choices rather than compromises. What sets the Subaru WRX STI 2004 apart is that its appeal isn't contingent on nostalgia alone. It stands on capability, character, and a track record of proving its worth in real conditions. As the automotive world leans further into electrification, advanced driver aids, and automated systems, the attributes that made the 2004 STI stand out grow increasingly rare and valued. For many, it represents the last era when a performance sedan could feel purpose-built without heavy digital mediation. The discussion around it has shifted from whether it was good in its day to how it helped define an era and why its core qualities still resonate. For anyone contemplating ownership or reflecting on its place in automotive history, the message is clear. The Subaru WRX STI 2004 didn't just arrive, it imprinted itself. It delivered on the promise of rally technology for the street, minted a wave of loyalists, and set a standard subsequent models have had to answer to, whether through evolution or tribute. In a landscape now filled with crossovers, hybrids, and touchscreen-laden cabins, its identity feels even sharper by contrast. It stands as proof that purpose and passion can meet practicality without losing soul. And for those who remember seeing one for the first time, or are just now discovering what made it legendary, that resonance is exactly why its story endures. The final takeaway is simple. This machine didn't just define its year, it defined a mindset. If you've stuck around for the full ride, leave a like and subscribe, then tell me which car or era deserves the next deep dive.